The 8th transgender woman of color has been murdered in the United States, this time in Philadelphia. The victim is London Kiki Chanel, and she was stabbed to death by a man who has already come forward and admitted to the crime. Raheem Felton confessed to the murder and is in custody, according to BuzzFeed. Felton, who allegedly stabbed Chanel multiple times, is charged with possession of an instrument of crime and murder. He's scheduled for a preliminary hearing on June 3rd. Now, this is a story that I think needs to be talked about in the media, especially considering the topic of, transgender people coming out, raising awareness about some of the things that they go through. There are some studies indicating that up to 41% of transgendered individuals attempt suicide at some point in their lives. So they're getting murdered by people, they're going through severe emotional trauma that could lead them to attempting suicide. And so this is just another woman who had to suffer from this. And by the way, I should also note, even though she's transgender, there were multiple media reports and the police report that referred to her as a male. And so we need to stop being so ignorant when it comes to this community. We really need to get a little smarter. And, thankfully, someone as high profile as Bruce Jenner did come forward and kind of open up about this. And I think that it has led to some, good awareness. But obviously that wasn't enough, and we haven't done enough to address this issue.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just because Bruce Jenner did his, interview and Transparent won a Golden Globe, and Laverne Cox is, Time's 100 most influential people, all of those are huge steps in the right direction for the trans community. But in no way, shape, or form means that the fight for equality for this community, this is just beginning. We are just starting to make headway and taking this entire segment of our society out of the shadows. They've been brutalized and marginalized for so long. And the fact that in life and in death, transgender people don't even have the dignity of being identified properly is so sad and tragic. And it's a mirror, the fact that, in death, this woman wasn't correctly identified. And just like in life, the society we don't have an infrastructure to let these people live their lives openly, safely. Yeah. It's a tragedy.
And then when we try to create that infrastructure, you have politicians, right-wing politicians specifically, that fight back and push back against it. You have members of the media like Rush Limbaugh that demonize these individuals as if they're freaks or something. And the reality is they're people who have a different identity from what you see on the outside. And I think a lot of the hatred usually comes from ignorance, right? And it comes from fear. You're ignorant, so you're fearful of this community, and so you lash out in these ways. But you got to understand that they're not strange, they're not weird, this is who they are.
How is it hurting you?
Exactly.
That's what I'm like, if they are impeding on your rights, your ability to be yourself, then I can maybe understand, but it has nothing, like you said, it comes from fear.
Yes.
And the one thing I do want to say is that the fear of also being politically correct sometimes keeps people from talking about things that are taboo or stigmatized. And there's a lot of sensitivity around how to talk about the trans community. And I worry, every time I cover our story, I'm like, I hope I'm saying this, because, I want to show the utmost respect.
Of course.
But it is hard, but I just don't want anyone to not engage in the conversation because they're worried they're not going to say something right. And, I think about these, the policemen who, and women who would have, possibly been part of this case. And I don't know the circumstances of why the murder victim wasn't properly identified, but, I don't want to just lay the blame, sort of blanket, but it's like we have to recognize it, and that's really on the way to getting, to us all, like having a solution to this problem.